Good evening. 102 of the youngest migrant children who've been taken at the border were supposed to be reunited with their parents by tonight. However, that's what a federal judge ordered 2 weeks ago. It's what the man responsible for holding those kids once suggested could be accomplished with just a few computer keystrokes. And tonight, even as his agency is saying it will fail to meet that court-imposed deadline, that same official, HHS Secretary Alex Azar, is saying the government did many of these kids a favor by taking them, and tonight by keeping them from what he described as rapists, murderers, and people who aren't really their parents.
I could release all of the kids by 10:55 p.m., but I don't think you want that. I know the court doesn't want that, and I don't think even our political opponents want that to happen. That's
Secretary Azar on the Situation Room tonight. Now, remember, this is someone talking about children his agency took in the first place and has held for weeks now. As for the thousands more who crossed the border unaccompanied, Secretary Azar suggested his agency was practically doing God's work.
It is one of the great acts of American generosity and charity, what we are doing for these unaccompanied kids who are smuggled into our country or come across illegally.
Well, what Secretary Azar did in that interview is what the administration really has been doing throughout this episode. He repeatedly conflated the unaccompanied minors with kids, some 2,800 to 2,900, who've been taken from parents under the president's zero-tolerance policy. And perhaps that's understandable. Perhaps caring for unaccompanied minors is indeed something to be admired. It's nothing controversial really about it, which may be why the secretary prefers to talk about that or blur the distinction, because keeping them honest, when it actually comes to those thousands of separated kids or the 102 children younger than 5 years old that the administration created the crisis and is not taking responsibility for it. And whatever you might think of the administration's zero-tolerance border policy, officials enacted it under false pretenses. They have lied about many aspects of it, not planned for the human consequences, and now, after all that, are trying to talk their way out of it. Let's just start with the false pretenses.
First, this administration did not create a policy of separating families at the border. We have a statutory responsibility that we take seriously to protect alien children from human smuggling, trafficking, and other criminal actions while enforcing our immigration laws.
Well, keeping them honest, that's barely half true. It is, however, totally disingenuous. The administration, they chose to enforce the law, but in a way that two prior presidents, Republican and Democratic, declined to, precisely because it would lead to mass family separations, which, of course, it did. But the Trump administration viewed zero tolerance, as they called it, as a potential deterrent to illegal border crossing. And that's a legitimate, albeit harsh way to look at things, as long as you accept responsibility for it, which frankly this administration did not.
It hasn't been good, and the American people don't like the idea that we're separating families. We never really intended to do that.
Well, actually they did. They really did intend that. Just ask him back when the policy was announced and before the world was greeted with images of kids locked in chain-link cells.
If you cross the border unlawfully, even a first offense, then we're going to prosecute you. If you smuggle an illegal alien across the border, then we'll prosecute you for smuggling. If you're smuggling a child, then we're going to prosecute you. And that child will be separated from you, probably, as required by law.
Again, not required by law, done by choice, touted as a deterrent, something the administration proudly owned until the consequences came and the stories changed. Then all kinds of things suddenly seemed to get awfully fuzzy with the administration. Listen to what HHS Secretary Alex Azar said during congressional testimony about how easy he said it would be to reunite parents and their separated children.
There is no reason why any parent would not know where their child is located. I could, at keystrokes, I've sat on the ORR portal with just basic keystrokes within seconds, could find any child in our care for any parent.
Well, he said that late last month, just hours before a judge gave the government 30 days to reunify all families divided under the so-called zero-tolerance policy, and 2 weeks for the youngest kids. By late last week, though, Secretary Azar was saying HHS did not even have an exact count of how many children it had in custody, somewhere below 3,000, he said, an estimate about children we're talking about. Now, by the way, the administration had been releasing exact numbers daily. That is until the judge issued his order. Then all of a sudden, the numbers stopped. No more magical keystrokes, I guess. And let's just listen to this, just to remind you.
There is no reason why any parent would not know where their child is located.
Well, that, of course, wasn't true either. The parents did not know. Apparently, he didn't know. Still, he did say that HHS would meet all the deadlines where this now unspecified number of children was concerned, and that wasn't true either. But he said it anyway. And the way he said it suggested that the real problem lay with the court order, not the administration failing to have a plan for living up to it.
We will comply with the artificial deadlines created by the court. We will comply even if those deadlines prevent us from conducting our standard or even a truncated vetting process.
So at the end of the day, that process cannot seem to even reunify all 102 children younger than 5 years old with their families. And again, late today, Secretary Azar painted a postcard picture of the lives that these kids now lead.
Well, what we do is we provide as caring an environment. They get education, they're getting athletics, they're getting entertainment, they get medical care, dental care, mental health care, vision care, they're getting snacks. Then of course the care management, the case management to try to place them with relatives if it's not about this reunification process. We place them in a safe environment with other relatives who are here in this country, even if they're here illegally. It's what we do as part of this program regularly, but it's always about child welfare. It's about compassion and love towards these kids and protecting them. And I know that's what you want. Anyone else wants us to do that.
So for him, he says it's all about the kids. As for the president, what are his thoughts on untangling the human mess that his policy created? Listen.
Well, I have a solution. Tell people not to come to our country illegally. That's the solution. Don't come to our country illegally. Come like other people do. Come legally. Mr. President. I'm saying this very simply. We have laws, we have borders. Don't come to our country illegally. It's not a good thing.